a Europe that is devastated by the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which started on the 24th of February 2022. Now, as the world suffers the effects of the war, Eswatini is not exempt. The need for firm and intentional collaboration multilaterally has never been more important. I'm joined by EU Ambassador to Eswatini, Dessislava Choumelova. A very good morning, Desi. Always lovely having you here on the show. How are you this morning?
Kusile, good morning. Always a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, Desi, a special day for Europe, but I just spoke on the the devastation that it's currently facing with Russia's invasion to Ukraine. Let's talk about the premise of the day being clear. That the foundation is firmly set on the idea of peaceful coexistence. Talk to me about how much of a threat this war is to this ambition.
It is very sad, as you said, that for a second time I'm come here on Europe Day and there is war in Europe, obviously because the founding principle and the founding premise of the European Union is to never have war on European continent again. And I must say that since the Schuman Declaration that you rightly pointed created the idea of European solidarity and cooperation, which then came to give birth to the European Union, political, economic, and security and defense bloc of 27 countries in Europe. We have war in Europe. We have managed, however, since the 50s, in the aftermath of the Second World War, to preserve peace in Europe. We have enjoyed everything that peace brings. Which is opportunity to thrive, to reach out to others, to build partnerships internationally, including with Eswatini, to work intensively on the world scene as one of the global actors, together with our member states, for peace and stability, and for conflict resolution.
Yeah. Conflict resolution is very important. We've seen you, supporting Ukraine in particular with, a lot. Talk to me about the support that you are providing to Ukraine right now in this very, very, very urgent, situation.
We stand firmly with Ukraine because Ukraine is not the aggressor in this war. Ukrainian men and women have been showing absolutely amazing and admirable bravery in defending their country, defending their homes, their hospitals, their children.
Yeah.
So we stand firmly with Ukraine, not because the moral values are on their sides, they're defending their right to exist, but because we have always been, as the European Union, strongly supporting the multilateral order, an order where no country, no matter how big or powerful, can decide that other countries have no right to exist, where every country has to respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of other countries. So we stand firmly with Ukraine because they're defending their country, because historically truth, fairness are on their side.
Yeah.
And when I speak about the support, first of all, symbolically, today on Europe Day, which is a very important occasion for Europeans to celebrate our joint efforts to have peace, our unity, our commitment to the values that underpin the European Union, which is freedom, peace, democracy, the rule of law, human rights, of course. So we all stand for that. And today the celebration is headed by the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, who is in Kiev. Last night, the Ukrainian President Zelensky confirmed that from today, Ukraine will celebrate Europe's Day as well. So it shows how close we have come together with Ukraine because of the unjustified and provoked Russian aggression on the country. And our solidarity is wide-ranging. We are supporting the country with altogether up to now 37.8 billion euro. And this ranges from macroeconomic support, because while Ukrainians are mobilized to support the country fighting with the Russians, pensions and salaries need to be paid. The economy needs to keep working. There should be electricity, there should be food on the tables. So we support Ukraine with that. We support Ukraine with humanitarian aid. We have over 7 million Ukrainian refugees, mostly women and children, in Europe. So we support them. We have started thinking about the reconstruction of Ukraine, and we support most recently Ukraine with military assistance, which is quite unprecedented. So Mr. Putin, with his aggression, has pushed the European Union towards more sovereignty when it comes to our ability to defend ourselves and to support our neighbors, because Ukraine is a neighbor. And to finish on a very positive note, Ukraine has applied, and on 23rd of June last year, we have given Ukraine a status of a candidate country to join the European Union. It is a long process. There are stringent criteria. You have to be a free market economy, you have to be a democracy, but Ukraine has decided absolutely, with no doubt, they want to take this road, and we are ready to support them on this road towards joining the European Union.
Yeah, certainly looking forward to that development, and you know, I'm hopeful, and I know for sure that it's going to work. It looks to be, you know, quite a meaningful criteria that you're talking about there, in resolving some of the, you know, it is the most urgent, I believe, right now issue in the world. And I'm saying this because we are living in trying economic times right now globally, and most of it is because of the effects of the war itself. I want you to talk to me about, Ambassador, you know, the support that you continue to support Eswatini with. Particularly, I've seen you, you know, on the news, you know, committing to sustainable agriculture, committing to a lot of other developmental projects in the country. You know, talk to me about some of those projects.
Thank you very much. Indeed, the European Union has been and remains a long-standing and solid partner of Eswatini. We are supporting the development objectives of the country. We are supporting the country in becoming economically successful. We are supporting country in its attempts to eradicate poverty, to redress inequality, which remains a huge problem in the country. And we have done it via support for free primary education, something that the European Union supported for a number of years, and then the government continued to support with reforming the school curricula. We do believe and trust that education is extremely important. At the same time, we support the economy of the country via a long-term assistance to the agriculture sector. As we speak, we have 3 big projects in the agriculture sector to do with irrigation. So a lot of farmers, smallholder farmers, have access to irrigation water by water schemes. We support the country to diversify the agricultural production to make it indeed, as you said, more climate resilient. We support smart agriculture. We support new crops that need less water but also can be exported more easily. We support the country with trade facilitation under the EU SADC Economic Partnership Agreement, where Eswatini has tariff-free, quota-free access to the European market, but most importantly, in fact, we aim to support regional integration where Eswatini can trade more and benefit more from trade in the region. We support Eswatini also in food production, because you still import more than 80% of food, while the country can produce food and can also process this food to export and to make sure it fulfills also the demand in the market. Turning to other ongoing projects, we have been looking at social protection in the recent past. We have been supporting the country in the very difficult time during the COVID pandemic, not only with vaccines via the COVAX, but also with the mitigating the impact on COVID, because it has been quite serious on the economy as well. We have worked and continue to work with the Bafalali Red Cross to make sure that cash transfers are reaching the most vulnerable of the population in different parts of the country. We are supporting the country together with the World Food Program, again with cash transfers, but also supporting people who have been affected by the torrential rains in November last year. And of course, I cannot not mention that our major focus in the next 7 years is youth. And you rightly mentioned that we are looking at how to support youth in particular. Why? This is a very young country. Over 17% of the population is below 35. But there is a huge unemployment problem. And we would like to see Eswatini youth reaching its potential. And the country cannot afford to lose the talents, the energy, the innovation that comes with youth. So our partnership program with Eswatini in the coming years will be heavily focused on creating the right skills for employability and entrepreneurship for youth, to make sure that they can create their own businesses, but also have the skills to find the jobs and contribute to the economic prosperity and to for progress in the country for their own benefit, but also for the benefit of everybody in the country.
You speaking of, the European Union placing the youth at the center of its cooperation with Eswatini, the latest development we saw last week. Was it this week or last week? I stand to be corrected, but the induction of the Youth Sounding Board within the European Union. Talk to me, Ambassador, about this development. We saw 15 young Emaswati being called a new European Union Youth Sounding Board. Their committee, what are they supposed to do? What is their role?
Indeed. So I was very, very happy last year to welcome and to sign a memorandum of cooperation with 15 young Emaswati, both young men and women from various backgrounds, walks of life, and from all the 4 regions in the country, and to designate them members of the Youth Sounding Board, and also to ask them to be the EU youth ambassadors in the country. Why? We live in a very complex world. It's quite difficult to navigate it. There is a lot of disinformation, misinformation. The world is rapidly changing, and there are lots of global challenges that we face together. You mentioned climate change. We just went through a pandemic. The very negative consequences of the Russian aggression on Ukraine I felt throughout the world via high fuel prices, high food prices, and who is going to solve it? The youth. It is young people that come with new ideas and new ways of doing things, but also it is young people that are often left aside, and they have to implement decisions they did not participate in. So the idea behind the Youth Sounding Board is exactly sounding, is to hear the voices of youth. We have been very successful with this idea because at Brussels, level in Brussels, our commissioner in charge of international cooperation established a first international Youth Sounding Board 2 years ago. So she had 25 young men and women from all over the world advise her. So this is the idea, that we get the opinions, we get the wisdom and the ideas of young people when we conceptualize, but also when we implement our programs and projects in Eswatini to make sure that they're relevant to the youth and to make sure that they're inclusive of the youth.
And as a young person myself, I feel very motivated to see young people being involved, in engagement processes and participation processes, lawmaking and fostering law processes. You have spoken on disinformation and information, and I'm reminded of, a speech that you delivered on Wednesday last week at it was Press Freedom Day. You were with other local media houses on, the importance of press media freedom. Talk to me about the importance of, press freedom.
Press freedom is at the foundation of all other rights. because people cannot understand even and fully enjoy their rights if they don't have right to accurate information.
Yeah.
And we rely on our journalists and media workers for that. Press freedom is fundamental to any democracy. And we know that the journalists and media workers in Eswatini have been under a lot of pressure. In the last year and a half since I'm here, I've seen them attacked, their properties attacked, and very often there is pressure for them to take sides. But journalists are servants of truth. They're asked, and their vocation is to speak truth to power. And in the European Union, we stand for that right. That's why I invited journalists to listen to them, to allow them to have an exchange about the challenges they are facing, but also to share with them my concern about lack of objectivity sometimes, about the phenomena of disinformation, misinformation, especially when it comes to digital media, to share with them what they're doing with the EU, at the EU level, to try to counter disinformation. We have a site which is EU versus disinformation, countering narratives that are not based on facts, and we rely very much on journalists to make sure that their reporting is fact-based and they give opportunity to the public at large, to all citizens, to form their opinions and take part in the political processes in full awareness of the facts. That's very important. We need to know what reality is to be able to deal with this, especially when there's so many different challenges and contestations out there in a rapidly changing world.
Yeah. I want us to go back to what you mentioned earlier. You spoke about, your commitment to making Eswatini competitive in its capacity to be competitive in intra-African trade, regionally in particular, but also globally as well. I mean, the Ministry of Commerce right now is working, they're being steadfast on a commitment they made under the African Continental Free Trade Area. I mean, last week, it was this week actually, we saw them working on the validation of the draft of the AfCFTA. I want you to speak more on the program that you have to improve Eswatini's capacity in this regard.
Thank you very much. The European Union strongly supports the African Continental Free Trade Area. We do believe that our regional economic partnership agreements, and the first and most successful of those is the economic partnership agreement we have with the southern African countries, and Eswatini is part of that, the SADC EU Economic Partnership Agreement. And it provides for removing barriers to trade, facilitating trade, market access, working on competitiveness, removing barriers, including sanitary, phytosanitary barriers, customs barriers. And we support Eswatini, in fact, via this economic partnership agreement, because all the trade facilitation measures, customs rules, rules of origin rules, all the other measures would also support the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And also we support Eswatini via COMESA. And you're right, indeed, we had the COMESA Secretariat here last week looking at supporting trade and competitiveness. So in Eswatini concretely, on top of the two lines of support via the regional trade agreements, we have concrete projects to implement our economic partnership agreement, to better tap the opportunities for export, but also we are working to capacitate small and medium enterprises in particular to be able not only to do business better in the country, but we support their export readiness, we support their access to markets, to regional value chains, adding more value and bringing back more value to the country. We're very passionate about this. We have a big program about private sector development and business climate, and our ambition is to have more than 1,200 small and medium businesses capacitated.
And I suppose that is why we see you working with women in trade and development as well, for inclusion as well. I think that is two birds with one stone. You've mentioned the cross-cutting issues of the most urgent global issues right now, which is climate change, unemployment, health issues as well. I think we have, how many minutes? We have about 3 minutes. I want you to talk to me about your commitment to help the health sector of Eswatini as well, because we've seen you visible there. So.
Of course, the pandemic has shown us that in the face of global health emergencies, first we have to stand together. So our lessons learned as the European Union is that we have strengthened our support for the global health system with funding, but also with scientific and research cooperation.
Yeah.
And concretely, we are supporting vaccine production in Africa. And in Eswatini, concretely, of course, one long-standing problem in Eswatini is the HIV/AIDS pandemic.
Yeah.
And the EU is one of the biggest supporters of the Global Fund. So we will continue, and we have increased our funding for the Global Fund. We want to see the progress made remain, and Eswatini on the track to keep this progress. And I think, again, if you allow me, the role of youth, young people, is absolutely crucial. The need to keep to safe sex practices, the need to be informed, the need to know how you can protect yourself. So information, not to become complacent, because we know that the biggest number of new infections are among the youth, which is very problematic. It also has socioeconomic roots. We should not forget that there are young girls in this country that have no choice but to resort to transactional sex, and usually this is not protected. So opportunities for young people would also create the right socioeconomic foundations to fight AIDS and other diseases.
Point,
And for this, we need to empower youth. And that's why we're focusing so strongly on youth empowerment, on making sure youth voices are heard by the EU, but also I believe this is part of the youth policy. And I was very reassured to hear the Minister of Youth, Culture and Sport say that this is very much the policy now of the country, listening to the youth, involving youth in decision making that is relevant to their future. And for that reason, I'm extremely happy also to say that today, on Europe Day, we are launching the EU Bushfire School Festival, working with youth and providing them with the opportunity to join one of the biggest festivals in Africa, Bushfire, opportunities to express themselves via art, to learn via art. I'm very thrilled with the partnership with House on Fire in that regard. And today on Europe Day, we are launching the Schools Festival, and the EU Schools Festival this year takes place on Africa Day, on the 25th of May. So I'm very happy and much looking forward to share with young children from all over Eswatini, including children with disability. We are working with UNICEF on a big project to help children with disability reintegrate in school, catch up with everything lost during the pandemic. So I can welcome everybody in the country to join us at House of Fire on the 25th of May for the EU Bushfire School Festival to celebrate the creative powers and the creative urges and talents in youth in Eswatini. And I can tell you that I'm always impressed with how much young people can express and bring via art.
Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. Always lovely to have you here to provide your insights as well as the programs that you have in developing the nation of Eswatini. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That's Choumelova Dessislava, the EU ambassador to Eswatini. What I like about her is her passion for the youth in Eswatini, as well as for inclusion. She's also touched on, people with disability, but, most importantly, her imploring the youth to take advantage of the demographic dividend that we have in Eswatini in, developing the country, as well as the many cross-cutting issues that the country faces. And she did mention that that is going to solve a lot of the socio-economic problems that the country faces. We go for a net break. When we return, we wrap up the show.